What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Tales from the Soundcheck podcast.
We're back, and in this one, we're going to be talking about some of our guilty pleasures in music. This one's going to be a fun one and probably shocking.
Probably shocking. What's up, Dan? How you been?
Chilling, dude. Hanging in there, just working weird hours because employees suck, but I'm here.
We should talk about working horrible jobs while being in bands. That should be a fun episode. Nobody wants to hear that shit, though, right?
I mean, I can't complain. My job let me go on tour.
As did mine.
Yeah, so it was a decent trade-off, at least for what I was doing. I was just delivering car parts for BMW Bridgeport.
BMW guy.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Shotgun question for you.
Mm.
What's the biggest financial mistake you've ever made with gear or a music decision? Joining a band, maybe signing a document, buying merchandise that didn't sell?
Mm. That is a great question. Um, hmm. Well, I will say this was a great experience, but the cost of it was great. So when ARC first started going on tour, we went on our first tour in 2011. It was great. So we started on the East Coast. It was just a easy East Coast run. Uh, Pretty sure it was just basically from like Massachusetts, uh, Connecticut, and then down the East Coast, all the way down to Florida and back. And that leg of the tour was awesome. But then, like a couple weeks later, we made kind of a big leap because, like, as you know, it's already hard enough to like get tour routing and the East Coast is one thing, but we decided that we were going to take our chances and go out west, and that was only our like second actual tour. So that run was about 3 weeks. Uh, but yeah, without going like too deep into it, basically, we got out there. That's where I talked about that Fresno show and the guy dropping a napkin in Jake's hand. Main reason we were going out there was so we could basically do our thing for Face Down. We were doing like we were playing like a show out in, I think we were in Fullerton. They were going to come out and check us out and stuff and talk. Won't name names. We were working with a guy that was doing some booking for us. Basically, we got out there, we played that last show in Fresno, and then all of a sudden he was like, hey, so all of your dates back east dropped. And then he went radio silent. So basically, we had long and short of it, we took a little break. I had some family out in Ramona, out in San Diego County, so we hoofed it from Fresno down that way. Stayed there for a few days, and we found out there was another tour that was starting out in like I don't even remember if it was California. I think it was going to be in like Arizona. And so we were basically like, hey, can we just hop on these dates? We will literally just play for merch money. We just need a route home, basically. And that was a really awesome tour. We played with Overcome. That they weren't on the whole tour, but that was one of the dates in Arizona. We played with Overcome, but the tour was with Messengers, who was on Strike First Records, and then Strength and What Remains. They were from Florida, and we were going out with them. And I think there was another band, Iron Will, that was on that tour. They were from Georgia, and we went back out east. Basically, I think we went as far as like Tennessee before we like just kind of hoofed it home. But yeah, after that, I think we were about 5 to 6K in debt.
Brutal.
Yeah. Experience amazing. As I said, we didn't really make up those costs until like basically right before the band broke up. Like we didn't start making money until those like last couple tours.
Yeah, it's a tough game, especially when stuff like that happens.
Yeah, lots of what if questions in hindsight, but like at the same time, it was just like it was a great run, regardless.
Did you ever find out what happened to those shows?
Um, no.
No. Bummer.
My assumption was that they were never booked in the first place.
Yeah, that would be my first guess, is that they were smoked.
Yeah, and the thing that was awkward is that the guy who was booking it was at the time in another band, a fairly well known one. Again, not going to mention names, but yeah, it was like I said, we were cool whenever we ran into each other, but it was still like a fuck you, dude.
I get that. Mine was not thousands and thousands of dollars, but I would say when I believe we were probably even still forsaking the sky at the time, but we needed a trailer and we had a makeshift trailer that my drummer had built with just like shitty lights. It was just street legal. And it was literally a flat trailer that they built a box on with plywood and stuff, and it was terrible.
Mm,
Um yeah, and everything was just makeshift. So we were like, we need a trailer. So we found a trailer out in Western Mass, and we met up with these guys. And I think they wanted $900 for the trailer, or $1,000 or something like that. It was me, my guitar player, and my drummer. And we met up with them, ironically, in the Worcester Palladium parking lot to buy this trailer. We were like, where can we go that's neutral? That's like we're a band picking
mm.
shit up. I don't
In
know
the
why we thought
daytime,
that.
that's actually like a cool spot. At night, that's a little sketch.
Yeah, yeah. Worcester is sketchy as shit.
Cannot say
Um,
the same as the Webster parking lot. That is sketch
yeah, that's like
24/7.
can you imagine doing a transaction of any kind in the Webster parking lot? Uh,
Nope, no, not going down that road.
we bought this trailer and it ended up being like a mule trailer.
Oh god.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was like it was clearly an animal trailer that they put a full door on.
Did it smell?
It wasn't bad. It
Okay.
wasn't like a it didn't smell like shit or anything. But
Thank Christ.
um
That would have been awful.
yeah, we spent probably like $1,000, and then we probably put like 400 into it in like new wiring. John was doing all the wiring and making sure the chassis was good for it and everything, the frame or
Yeah.
whatnot. And we never brought it to a show. We couldn't get it to work, so we ended up selling it to some guy. And the guys that we sold it to, these guys were straight like fucking mob dudes. Like the dude was like, "Yo,
What?
if it doesn't work, I'm coming back here." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And me and my drummer were just looking at each other like, "Yo, we're gonna
Bruh.
die." Like,
Oh, Cameron went with you?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He was at
Jesus.
my house, and I remember my dad
God.
saying after we sold the trailer, he went and got us the bill of sale, printed it out at work or whatnot, and gave
Okay.
it to us. And he was there, and he's like, "If you ever let motherfucking people like that in my house again, I'm gonna kill the both of you."
Where, d my guess, talking like that, they're from Waterbury.
Yeah, it was. They were either from Waterbury or Hartford. I think it might have been Hartford,
Yeah, that's about right.
but they were wearing tracksuits, so it was
You
like
never
that
know.
typical. Yeah, yours is more unfortunate than mine story, but because we only lost about
That's
fifteen hundred
okay.
bucks,
You
but
you definitely lighten the mood there.
yeah, yeah, it is. Let me tell you though, that trailer was a fucking nightmare. Me and John just like so upset, like just to try to make it work, and we were like, dude, we got swindled. We bought a fucking mule trailer to tour in, like so dumb. And we've had a couple trailers since,
Uh,
mind you. One trailer, and I was able to get like half off on like like one of those nice, not Western Cargo, but like a nice trailer. We got a nice 5x7, brand new off the lot. Picked it up at the van, got half off. First night, the first night we had a show in Waterbury, and on the way home, dropping Lorenzo off at his house in Bristol,
mhm.
we get rear-ended.
Oh, Jesus.
Nobody got hurt, but they
That's good.
ran. We didn't get them.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. And then Cameron tried to chase them with a van and a trailer, and it was not going to happen. So the reason why I was asking for that shotgun question about, uh, you know, have you had an unfortunate financial break is you're guilty of spending money. But this episode we've been talking about for a while between ourselves that we wanted to kind of create ourselves a little playlist discussion of things in music that we're guilty pleasures, things that we listen to that they might not, they're not a bad thing. It's just that you might not think that that might be an influence, or that might not be something that you jam out to when you're in a mood or just in general.
Yeah, we can start this at a couple different spots. We can start with cringe and go into more modern cringe that's less, or go into the more modern stuff, then go into the cringe.
Let's start with modern cringe.
Okay.
I'm about that. I'll go first.
Yeah.
Uh Ghost.
Yeah, I can't argue that.
I
I
I
can't.
love
I'm
Bon
right there with
Jovi,
you.
dude. And
Oof.
and for some reason, I just love Bon Jovi. That style of
Hey man, I'll give you Bon Jovi. I'm not with the boss.
I love the fact that they look like, Behemoth. They're like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was always their shtick. The fact that it was just like, dude, like you look like the most brutal black metal band, like just super theatrical.
Yep,
But then it's just like
it's Bon Jovi.
I've had many comparisons with Ghost. So one of my favorites that I've come to notice over time is if the next time you go to listen to Ghost, especially the more well, pretty much any era, but I was listening to one of their newer tracks and I was just like, God damn it, Papa sounds like fucking Weird Al Yankovic. You're gonna not you're not gonna be able to unhear it every time you listen to him now. I'm sorry.
Maybe Tobias Forge is gotten a thing for Weird Al.
I don't
Maybe.
know, but despite that one really funny oversight, um, I actually really like Ghost. I like their shtick because it just reminds me of a time. Like it makes me think of like guys like Alice, what Alice Cooper was doing back in the day, like the forerunners for that type of theatrical, just like hard rock, just like production.
Mm,
And like nobody, no modern band, like yes, metal bands, you have examples like Slipknot, and like plenty of bands do like these big awesome productions,
yeah.
but like Ghost, I just feel like it's a whole vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's elusive. That was the one thing, because you look at their merch and you're like, "Oh, that's a death metal band." Their aesthetic is dark.
They're just a hard rock band,
Yeah, and they're just a hard rock band, and
like through and through.
yep, and no matter who they cycle with as the Nameless Ghouls, is that what they're called? The Nameless?
Yeah, for I think they're still called the Nameless Schools. They've had many legal troubles and stuff like that, but despite that, Tobias Forge is definitely a very very innovative person, very creative.
He's a very incredible composer.
I could see where he has a lot of creative control and he wants his ideas to be probably very upfront, I would
Yeah.
imagine. But regardless of that, I don't know the dude. I've only watched a couple interviews with him, but regardless, I like the band. For me, I'm going to go back to a really special time. Now, I know a lot of people will judge me probably for even bringing this band up, especially because like this was from like the MySpace years. It was a really weird time for heavy music, but also a really special time because it was just like everybody was just doing whatever they fucking wanted, and there was just some interesting weird music that came out. And I think one of the bands that I have really fond memories of, especially having a personal story, I had a friend that played or I have a friend that used to play drums in this band, so I set my friends on fire.
All right. Yeah. I really don't have
Wasn't your thing?
the biggest comments. No, like I might have heard a couple songs. I think I wasn't like. It's amazing how that works too, because you can go through these genres and subgenres, especially just in metal, and see a band, hear about a band, but never really pay attention to a band. And it doesn't mean you don't like them. It's just there was so much to choose from, and there still
Yeah.
is. But
I think I specifically cite them just because it was like that MySpace era, and that
mhm,
was like, unless you were growing up during that time, you would never understand why half of these bands were popular.
I get that.
And I just thought it was just like kind of like a unique stamp in time because those were really fun shows.
That style of music is pretty big in Japan right now.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to watch. bands come up, do a bunch of stuff that we saw done like 10, 13 years ago. And
Yeah.
it's crazy how that works. It's awesome to see it because you see like the choreographed movements and, everybody's wearing collared shirts the same color. That's kind of like that aesthetic. A lot of bands were doing it.
Some bands like having like the uniform and then like having the vocalist stand out just so the rest of the band is just like, it's nice and like neat looking,
Yeah.
especially if you don't have like some crazy elaborate like stage setup and you just have a killer light show. Like that does, it's appealing to look at. But like at the same time, I also remember just like some of my favorite shows were going to just like hardcore shows in halls.
Hmm.
Pretty raw as you can get, but like, different things, I guess.
Polos and hemp necklaces and heavy pits,
Yeah, it sounds about 2004.
flip flops.
Yeah, yeah. American Eagle shirts.
Yeah. Being barefoot was a thing for a while.
Oof. I remember people being barefoot in Point Beach. Blech.
Not the place to be barefoot.
Fuck no.
I got to see Judas Priest in, I think it was 2004.
Was that at Ozfest?
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I went the same year.
yep. And
Rob Halford coming out on a fucking Harley.
yeah,
Bro,
yeah,
the most metal fucking thing.
it is. And every time I hear a Judas Priest song come on, I just turn that shit straight up. I don't care who's in the car.
Yeah.
There's something about that glam aspect. Like I'm not a big Kiss fan, but Judas Priest, I'd put them in a similar, lineup of bands. You'd have them on the same bill if you were doing a festival. But they have that glam leather spikes, studs, cock pieces. Rob Halford's he's a wonderful vocalist. And when I saw him almost 20 years ago, he was still killing it. So
Yeah.
that's a guilty one for me. Judas Priest, like Twisted Sister, shit like that. I love fucking Twisted Sister.
Dude, like anytime I think my all-time favorite Judas Priest song, and I know a lot of old heads will, I don't know, they may or may not disagree with me, but my favorite Judas Priest song was off of one of their albums from the 90s, which if anybody knows, the 90s was a really odd time for metal. Painkiller.
Yeah,
Absolutely just heavy, heavy, heavy.
great
Even for
song.
them. And also, like, if you're into that and want to hear a heavier version, check out the cover that Death did. Oh my god!
Death is not one of my guilty pleasures, but I
No,
love
no, no.
Death.
That's just a band that's ingrained in me. I'm so happy I came across them when I was a kid.
I used to have a Death Human t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to it, and even if I did, I'm not a small anymore.
Yeah.
So I would never be able to fit into that thing. I forgot where I got it from. But Death Human was one of my favorite albums in like
Yeah.
late middle school, early high school. All about it.
Mm-hmm. I remember that phase. I discovered them. First song I heard from them was like Crystal Mountain. And then I just kind of like worked my way back. And then I started getting into like black metal because I remember seeing like, even though like, I think it's weird that like they're not a guilty pleasure band for me because I don't really
Yeah.
listen to them much anymore, but like Cradle of Filth.
Dude, I didn't even think about that, but
Yeah, neither did I until just now. And I'm just like, dude, like, I know they are definitely like a bit on the cringe side, especially because of they're most certainly a goth metal band, but they lean heavy onto the black metal aesthetic.
yeah.
They're a very interesting take especially because they're from the UK.
Yeah, Danny Filth is this little proper British man.
Yeah, he's a very polite dude.
Yeah, yeah. He looks like I know that I used to have a Cradle of Filth documentary. I forget what it was.
I know what you're talking about. They used to do that all the time. That was kind of like an interesting thing back then. Before the internet, that they used to do like DVDs, and it had like just weird stuff on there, like weird independently made short films, but set to this weird background and theme. I don't know how to explain it.
ah,
Marilyn Manson did one back in the day too.
Cradle of Fear.
That's it.
That was fucked up, yo.
Yeah, it was. That was a absolute just, like, unhinged you would not be able to find that anywhere unless you actually bought that.
Yeah,
You won't find that anywhere because it is absolutely foul.
it's very foul.
It
Yeah,
is not for the, I would even say, even if you are a casual horror fan, if you are not into gore or, like, self-harm portrayals, I would not recommend this.
if you're into Terrifier,
Yes, I would say if you're into the Terrifier series, this would probably be right up your alley.
yeah, if you don't mind seeing people in pieces, then
Yeah,
you'll
that's
you'll
basically
enjoy
this
it.
in a nutshell, and I think it was made in, like, the late '90s, early 2000s.
I think it was 2001.
Something like that, yeah. That was a good one.
They were they
They
not
have
were, they
some
still play.
really good
They they
songs.
have yeah, they were the only band though that could put out a record every 90 days. They were crazy in making songs. They would put out like 2 records a year for a while, especially in the early
Because
2000s.
'Cause I'm trying to remember, was it Nymphetamine that was like a dual disc? I can't
Uh,
remember.
it might have been.
I can't remember. It might have been before that. Um,
They have a hit, was it Her Ghost in the Fog? That song.
that's a great song. They have a lot of good
The whole
songs, yeah.
song is so good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Guilty
yeah.
pleasure. Sorry, Danny Filth. I'd love to talk to that guy.
Dude, I mean, it would just be, I don't know, that would just be a wild time to talk to a dude like that. It'd just
Hell
be
yeah.
like, "What haven't you done?"
Yeah.
You guys like, they've had, like, small orchestras on stage with them. They have, like, goth, like, backup singers, like, they do the whole theatric goth thing that's just sprinkled with a little black metal that pisses a lot of people off still to this day.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't piss anybody off. We all like what we like.
Only the cult guys.
Yeah, the gatekeepers.
Oh gosh, that's an episode in and of itself. I don't know, that would be cool to actually get, like, 2 people on the for and against argument.
Yeah, that's a good
That'd
idea.
be interesting.
We could definitely see how that works. One thing that you and I both have on our list is probably one of my guiltiest pleasures, 90s pop music. Uh
Yes, yes.
Backstreet Boys.
Yep, yep, they're on my list too. And I'll also I could like roll in a bunch of bands because what you have to understand about from my perspective is that I lived in Europe from 1995. I lived in Germany from 95 to 2000. I did a total of 8 years. I lived there like a few years before when I was like very young, but from 95 to 2000 was like formative years of like music. So I was like from the time I was 7 till about 12, 13. Um, and so like I had a lot of weird influences, but I was also a little kid. So like I liked easy digestible music because that's where my brain was at. So I was totally all in for like Backstreet Boys, and saying Britney Spears, all that stuff. Wasn't super into like 98 Degrees and stuff like that. That was like after.
Oh yeah, what a weird group that was. Yeah, but we used to play it years ago when I was working for Hard Rock Cafe. We used to play it when we cleaned up.
Hmm.
You turn the lights on and just rip the sound system with just 90s pop music. It'd be like In Sync, Backstreet Boys, and then there'd be some other ones that would slip in there like Cake, Bare Naked Ladies, shit like that.
Yeah, no, no. Once in a while, Ace of Base comes on.
Dude, Ace of Base. I was gonna say Ace of Base is one of those ones. I back when I was in high school, I was friends with a dude who was really,
Skating
really
rink music.
yeah, yeah. I was friends with a dude who was really into cars, and his whole family was from Poland. So
Oh god.
guess you can kind of relate
Yeah.
to his music taste. And we would be driving around in his car, and all he would fucking play was Ace of Base, man.
Oh my god. Yeah, but like that makes so much sense though, because living in Europe in the '90s, this kind of trails back to that. Like Backstreet Boys, so like their first album, like if you go on Spotify, it says '96. Nah, it came out before that. They had a whole album's worth of music where they like took some of that like the hits and a couple other songs, put it on the other one. Then they did Backstreet's Back, and they threw that on there. In Europe, that was two separate albums. It was the Backstreet Boys, and then the second album was Backstreet's Back. It was weird.
That's a interesting tidbit. I didn't know that.
Yeah, going real down the rabbit hole here because I'm full of useless information.
Well, I mean, there were definitely groups from Europe, like Ace of Base, Spice Girls, and shit. I feel like pop music was just ahead in Europe than it was. The '90s for the United States was very big on, at least from my perspective, was very big on pop, but very big on like rock music and
Alternative was huge
alternative hip
because you
hop.
had bands like Bush. You
Yep.
had
Foo Fighters were coming out,
yeah, you had Smashing Pumpkins, Live. Uh, Geez, if you want to get deeper, like you had like G Love and the Special Sauce. There was just so many like interesting types of like rock music coming out.
The late '90s though into the early 2000s really changed rock music was when you started having bigger, heavier bands that were able to draw other crowds that were not Metallica.
Yeah, I mean, like the big four of the '90s for me, I guess in that regard, that were like the torchbearers for the next millennium. We'll say would probably be Korn, Slipknot for sure.
Hmm.
Um, arguably I would say Deftones just because of their longevity as a band,
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
just because they were huge during that era, but not necessarily my favorite would be like Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, Limp Bizkit was fucking sick.
Just because like you cannot argue the influence and like the hand on the pulse of society that that band had, because it made no sense why they were so popular. They just were.
And if you went to a Limp Bizkit or Korn concert or saw them together, whoo,
Yeah, you know it was going to be a good time.
yeah,
Like watching like the Family Values DVD.
yep,
Holy shit.
yeah, I still have that DVD.
So do I.
It's amazing. Never getting rid of that.
Nope. Although the one thing I thought that was interesting about the DVD, but they were on the CD if you bought it. Incubus was on that tour
That is true. I have the CD as well.
because that was back when Science was out, back when they were like a heavy funk band.
Yeah, another band too that was ahead of its time. Then I know this is not an episode about
Yeah,
ahead of
yeah,
its
yeah.
time, but 311,
Yeah, also. Yeah.
and they changed dramatically. They still have good stuff. I like their old shit.
Yeah. Sticking with the theme, at one point you had mentioned Japan.
Yep.
So I have to bring up a very obvious and I would definitely call this a guilty pleasure because I know this is also like a very I don't know. I don't know why it's a thing, why metalheads make such a big deal out of it, but I'm super into anime, and this band just kind of hit a chord with me when they came out, even though it's ridiculous. But I'm a big fan of the first couple Baby Metal albums. That's a weird one because they like their first album, they like each song, some were just ridiculous, but other ones actually like had good riffs and hooks and stuff like that where I could actually be like, this works for some reason. But the second album had some more good ones. There was like some gent influences on a couple of the albums, which was really, or a couple of the songs, which was really interesting, like super down tuned. But I don't know. The main appeal is I really like anime. I like anime theme songs and music, and then throw a really killer tight band on top of it. I'm all about it.
What was the band? Was it Malice Miser?
Hmm.
Another one. Interesting group. There's a lot of stuff I'll go back to and just be like, wow, this slapped.
Yeah.
And I realized it at the time when I was listening to it. But now 20 plus some odd years later, actually like sitting down and listening to something like you referenced like Limp Bizkit, uh listening to $3 Bill Y'all and Significant Other,
Yeah.
like back to back, I was like, this entire two records were
They're great.
yeah,
They're really
front to
awesome
back.
records.
Yeah.
It was funny because I was listening to I threw on Counterfeit, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this was such a heavy song back in the day."
Yep. It's actually one band I've never seen
Neither have I.
and probably won't be able to afford it ever.
Uh, if they actually don't cancel.
True. True.
They're notorious for that, but yeah.
One of my biggest guilty pleasures is listening to like older female headed rock bands like Heart
Oh, dude.
and Pat Benatar, dude.
Dude, that stuff was awesome. Like,
Still is.
yeah, it still is, and it's just like it's cool to see all the bands that are out now. There's so much variety, especially in the heavy scene. Seeing so much more like female-led bands, it just adds so much more variety to the music, and it's just like a really nice breath of fresh air, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because like there was only like a handful of bands back in the day that I remember that I listened to that were female fronted that I can like think of. The earliest one I remember listening to when I was younger was like Arch Enemy.
I saw her live, like right up at the press barricades, like right up against the stage one year.
Was that also Ozfest? Because I
It might
think,
have been an
yeah,
Ozfest.
because like I remember seeing them. I remember I think they had just come out with a record that year. It was the video for Dead I See No Future, and I was just like, oh my god.
She scared the fuck out of me
Dude, she's like a
watching her.
6'5", just like giant Swedish woman just commanding everyone.
She was
It was
humping like the
amazing.
monitors, dude.
She was wild, but
Yeah.
they were great. She had like a amazing stage presence. And then
Yeah.
I think of like Walls of Jericho at the time.
Mm,
Yeah, there's just so many more bands like that, but man, you can't discount like Heart, Blondie.
yep.
Oh my god. So there's so much of that good stuff. Much later in life for me, I don't listen to her as much as I'd like, but just in relation to listening to being a giant Opeth fan, because of Michael Ackerfeld, I got turned on to Joni Mitchell, and it's really nice to listen to once in a while. It just like completely chills me out.
Opeth is my favorite band to like to listen to while I'm driving, especially on longer
Anytime it
trips.
is like raining out, I'm listening to Blackwater Park.
Oh yeah. Great record.
I'm either listening to that or like the Damnation and Deliverance records.
Also very good. What's another one that I listen to that I don't get shit for it from people, but they're just like, "Really?
Yeah,
Dream Theater."
that's fair. I mean, like, I don't know. Like for me, I've liked Dream Theater for a long time. The first time I remember being introduced to them, which is another really random pop culture thing, was the Twister soundtrack.
Ah,
Yeah, they had a song on there, which was really interesting. But yeah, and then like I remember that, but then like years go by. I was a little kid when I first heard them, but then I got into like middle school, high school, and then I remember hearing Pull Me Under and like Train of Thought and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, this band's interesting. And yeah, no, Pertucci's great. I love the band a lot. It took me a long time to get used to the vocals, but like they're more current stuff in the last like 10 years or so. It's really grown on me.
they're pretty good. I worked with a guitar player who loved them, so it kind of got put into my head a little bit. And he sold it, just wouldn't stop talking about it.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
most Dream Theater fans are like diehard and they geek out.
Yep.
You know what's funny? And this is going to be like way out of left field. Just because it makes me think of my dad and like really good memories I had living in Tennessee when I was a kid. Back when like pop country was not, what it is now. It was just like really good songs, like really good pop songs. But I threw on like Brooks and Dunn, Boot Scootin' Boogie. That song's amazing. I have I have a soft spot in my heart for like '90s country. I'm big into like Hank Williams, pretty much all of them. The second, Hank the third, or Junior, Hank the third, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson. I'm all into that. But like the pop country stuff from the '90s, it just reminds me of my dad. He used to play a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, my dad used to be a country 92.5 guy. Oldies and that. It was pretty
Yeah.
much that's all you got. And then the music that I played, holy shit. He was just like he always supported it. He went to a few shows. Well, he just wasn't into it
I understand.
if I was playing something else.
My dad was a guitar player, and so my parents were super supportive of it because obviously it would keep me out of some trouble. Some. Um but yeah, he used to hoof me to shows back before I could drive and stuff. I used to play like drums in a pop punk band called Approaching August. We were around for a little bit, and yeah, that was a really cool time, to be completely honest, because he was super supportive of it, and that's when he kind of noticed that, like, it's like, oh, he's really into this, So, like, when it came to touring and stuff like that, they kind of had an idea that was coming.
Yeah. Well, he would lend us his van a lot, so he supported in
That's
that
cool.
way,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's different ways of supporting.
He knew it was something that I was very serious about, so
Yeah, of course.
he didn't give me much grief about it.
Oh man, just to get a couple more out of here because I had quite a few, but just some more honorable mentions. One of my favorite things to still listen to this day. I love listening to Weird Al. I'm a giant fan. Have been since I was
Okay,
a
yep,
child.
yep. Adam
Um,
Sandler too for me.
yeah, his comedy records. If you've never listened to,
Oh
like,
my
if you
gosh.
judge if you judge Adam Sandler strictly by his films, I
Yeah.
highly recommend going and listening to his albums from the '90s.
The
Uh,
peeper, the
oh my
peeper.
god, there's just Mother Trucker on Polychronopolis. Like, dude, like you have to listen to him. The skits and the songs both are amazing.
My favorite is the toll
Um,
booth Willie.
I'm coming out of the
I'm
booth.
coming out of the booth.
$1.25 here. All right, here's $1.25 and go fuck yourself. Fucking David Spade. All of his buddies are on there, like '90s SNL dudes. Like
Yep,
it's great.
check it out. You got Spotify. I'm sure
Definitely.
it's on there.
They're all gonna laugh at you. But also in that same vein, if you like silly music like that, another one of my guilty pleasures, even to this day, they're not like super like popular these days. I doubt too many people are super into them unless you were in like alternative metal from the '90s. But Green Jelly,
Oh, yeah.
they have this amazing song called Three Little Pigs. I can't recommend it enough. If you've never heard this song, I recommend going on YouTube and checking out the music video. It's claymation. Uh, Rambo makes an appearance. Like you're not going to be disappointed.
It's wonderful.
It is
It's
just
I forgot
crude.
about that.
This is I feel like the Green Jelly video, like the Three Little Pigs video specifically, literally wraps up the '90s in a nutshell. At least for me, because it's just like
Mhm.
it's just crude but it works.
Yep.
I saved the cringiest for last for me. The cringiest one, I think most people, or at least other people, would think is cringe. Uh, Hanson for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, Middle of Nowhere from Hanson was the first CD I ever bought. I lived in Germany. It came out in like 1996. Uh, yeah, I was like part of the Hanson fan club. I got a zine from them. I was part of like an early like web chat that was just for the Hanson community. Yeah, I was hooked.
It's amazing.
Yep. A lot of things that people probably didn't even think existed.
I think a lot of the people that we know too, if they were to come on here and sit down and talk, they would probably have very similar things to say. A lot of different, but a lot of similar. I wouldn't call them influences, but they are if we keep revisiting them and going back to them and listening to it. So
Yeah. I don't know. As a kid, there was just something about a bunch of like brothers playing music together, and it was just they write decent music, and it's kind of wholesome at the same time, or at least that's what it was then.
yeah,
But I mean, I think honestly, I think they've been independent for like over 20 years, so like, and they're still around, so good for them.
absolutely.
This is also a throwback from like times that I lived in Europe. Um, I'm Blue by Eiffel 65.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
that song, that whole record, Europop. Living in Germany, I was introduced to a lot of electronic music. Having two older brothers, and they had a lot of friends that were into all sorts of music. Over there, I got introduced to like new metal. I found out who like Sepultura was. Like so many weird kinds of music. I got super into Prodigy and Daft Punk back in like the mid 90s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it was just it was a time. There was a lot of cool, like really awesome, like house and trance music that was just like exclusive to over there. To be honest, nobody over here would probably really even they wouldn't be on their radar. I was super into a lot of electronic music at a young age.
Chumbawamba.
Oh man, thumping it.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah. I had a really close friend in Germany when that song came out. He would not stop playing it.
Yep. I knew
It
a few
was
people.
obnoxious.
They're not really. I wouldn't call them guilty pleasures, but they kind of are because they just make me happy.
Well, no, it's just like, especially for that band, I really think that was their only single. I think they were pretty much a one hit wonder.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
it is a stamp in time.
It
And
is.
like there's specific memories that are attached to those songs. So like, yeah, I definitely get that. Even if it's a bad song or what other people consider a bad song, it's just like, no, I have really awesome memories to that song.
Yeah. I enjoy listening to bands like the Aquabats and
Oh my
uh,
god.
Me
That
First and
makes
the
my
Gimme
heart happy.
Gimmes.
Yeah, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes is their cover of Rainbow Connection still hits me all the time.
Dude, they've got
As silly
there's
as that is. I loved the Muppets growing up, so like that yeah. That cover was special. A couple other ones. This is more on like the metal side, especially from the 90s. One song I got introduced to, and this is definitely a thing I know some people are going to have feelings about. Um, Actually, both of these probably. One I wanted to mention was Slayer. And a lot of people probably don't think 90s and Slayer a whole lot. That was a weird time for a lot of those bands from the 80s. And they put out this one album. Rick Rubin produced it, so it was a really interesting combination. But they had a bonus track that was on the European release called Wicked, and I remember hearing that for the first time, and I was just like, "Oh, this is like the heaviest thing I've ever heard." It was just like really evil sounding, but even then, I was just like, "Oh." Going back and revisiting Slayer when I was in high school, I was just like, oh man, this was like the song that sounded closest to old Slayer, but modern at the time. It's just super dry, but slower, but evil sounding Slayer. It's awesome if you haven't heard it.
Seasons in the Abyss came out in 1990.
Yes, it did. That's a great record, but
Yeah.
it also sounds like it was recorded in the bottom of a well.
Yep. And so was South of Heaven. I mean, like they're
Yeah,
all
both of those. Like even Raining Blood, a lot of those, that was kind of Slayer's thing.
yeah.
They were like the thrash black metal band before black metal hit the US.
One thing I'm really big on if I'm driving in the car, like smooth jazz.
Mm.
I don't know why. It might be a bass player thing. It just could be. It's just really soothing stuff. And then on top of that, I'm really into soundtracks, especially certain video game soundtracks.
Yes,
Uh,
I'm a big fan of OSTs.
yeah, movie soundtracks. One of the best soundtracks to ever hit any AAA title video game was the trilogy of soundtracks that came out with Mass Effect.
Mm.
Um, it's just an incredible composition of music. Movies too, yeah. Original soundtracks are just
We could do an episode just on that, honestly.
yeah, we could. But that's like one of my guiltiest pleasures is there's some movies that I could rattle off that I'm just like, I don't know, maybe just the music in the movie when I was watching it, maybe I felt the emotion that was in the film that was connected with that music and that's what it was supposed to do.
There's a few movies that do that for me. I think one of the most, and like, there's a lot of fun ones. Like ones I have fond memories of is like the Days of Confused soundtrack.
Mhm.
I don't know why that was like on rotation constantly in my house because obviously that era was when my dad was in high school, and just so much like hard rock, like it, so many different bands because they did like two different releases for it because there was so much music in that movie. But then there was like for me a really emotional one for me that And this is more so just the score in and of itself. This isn't even just like the featured artists, let's say, on a particular soundtrack, but the 28 Days Later score.
Mm. Hmm.
That I remember seeing that in theaters. It wasn't out very long because it was a really small movie when it came out. I just remember the music just completely driving that story. Even though like you could have no music and that movie would stand up great on its own two legs, but like the music, oh god, devastating. It's
Yeah.
almost like the first time I listened to Explosions in the Sky.
Mm. Devastating.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put listening to some music.
I don't know. Some people I like looking at soundtracks. It can bring on different emotions than listening to like metal or punk or any other normal music. There's just a different emotion, that orchestration, the way a song moves. Like it can really fuck you up.
Well, because you're not basing it off lyrical content either.
To me, it's almost more fluid because it's long form.
Yeah.
I only have one more on mine, and I might as well list it off because it's real funny. Again, this goes back to me living in Germany in the '90s and thinking I'm a cultured young hip dude when I'm like 8, 9 years old. Well, no, not quite that young, probably 10, somewhere around there. I remember when Kid Rock's "Devil Without a Cause" came onto the scene, and in Europe it took off. In the U.S., it took like a year to take off. But like they would not stop it playing over there, and I can't tell you how many times I would be playing Tony Hawk, which has a legendary soundtrack in and of itself.
Hmm. Oh
But
yeah.
there would be times where like I would just have the stereo, because the way my brother's room setup was, they had a receiver with nice speakers, so I would just switch it over to the CD player slash tape deck and just pop in a CD. So I remember getting my hands on that record one way or another. The It was funny because like I don't even recall how I was able to get a copy of that, but I remember distinctly that the disc cover was just Kid Rock's hand with a middle finger on it, and I took a black Sharpie and marked out the middle finger to just make it look like a fist, so my parents wouldn't think it was sus.
I remember that though. Ball with the ball. I mean, that was like that Limp Bizkit era too. You know.
It was, and I mean, like, I, I'm not gonna sit here and say share an opinion on Kid Rock one way or the other. He exists. He's a
Yeah.
dude,
He
like him or
exists.
not. He's there. He made a lot of music that a lot of people did like. It just so happened at that point in time, I really like that, and if it pops on, I'm not turning it off.
Yeah.
Specifically that record.
Yeah.
Anything else, no, that's pretty much getting shut down. It's pretty much just that first record for me. Anything after that, no thanks.
That's the whole theme of this episode is talking about a song coming on and one of your buddies goes over to turn it off. You're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, yeah,
Leaves
pretty
right on.
much. You're driving, maybe with a significant other or some buddies. You're driving, you're the one controlling the music. That song comes on, everybody looks at you, and you're just like, crank it up.
And roll the windows down and go.
Yep.
Well, that's going to do it for Dan and I's chat on some guilty pleasures. There's definitely hundreds more examples that we could have talked about. What are your guilty pleasures? We want to hear from you. Send us a DM. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Tales from the Soundcheck Podcast. Spotify allows you to listen to the show, follow us, and rate the show, which actually helps us to become an ever better podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for full episodes and exclusive clips. If you have any comments or want to chat with us on the show, or you have your band featured, please email us at talesfromthesoundcheckpodcast@gmail.com.